Yo, it's Market Scraper. So the question I have for you guys today is technical analysis something that we should be paying attention to, or is it something that we should be ignoring? And this is a double-edged sword because sometimes if you're really into the weeds and you're looking at all these technical charts, and these things could be kind of holding you back from doing what you need to be focusing on, and the things that are more important that are in front of you. But at the same time, if you're not paying attention to technical analysis, this idea of using it as a tool, not just living by technical analysis, but using it as a tool in the tool belt as one of the things that you pay attention to and watch and analyze. But before we get into this video, if you get any value from this content, don't forget to smash down on that like button. It really helps this content, helps other people see this video. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. It's free to do, and I'd really appreciate it. Okay, let's get into this. So this is a chart that a friend gave me, and I thought that was pretty important and very timely, and I posted this right when I got this. This basically is a trend line that comes from the peak of 2018 and to the peak that we had over here, and it showed us that we just hit it. Were we going to bounce off this? This was the question. And so what happened since here? Well, first of all, since then, this was when Bitcoin was at 43,402 is when I posted this. And right now Bitcoin is at 49,000. So if we want to take a look at what this actually means, and what do I mean by the peak in 2017? So if I drew a line from, let's say, right around here to the peak over here, basically we bounced off this right here. And I gave this to everyone's attention. And if you want to follow me on StockTwits. This is the message that I gave in a timely fashion on StockTwits. And we can see here, we bounced right off this. So I definitely took this as an opportunity to add more Bitcoin. So this was a scenario where if you had some technical analysis, it could give you an idea of when is a good chance to potentially buy or add more Bitcoin. It has definitely worked out so far. So we'll see where Bitcoin goes after this, but this was an interesting place to add to some Bitcoin. Let's look at some other examples here. In the last update that I gave you guys, I talked about adding Tesla at 630 on average on this day that we went down here. And this is the line that I drew a long time ago. If you look at my early technical analysis videos about Tesla, I drew this line, talked about it when we went over here, thinking, was this the bottom right here? And basically, I drew this line ever since we hit this line twice. And I've been, again, talking about how I've been buying every time we hit this line. Sometimes we went below this line, as you can see in this period of time right here. But this was my indication of this is where I'm going to start buying and adding to Tesla. This didn't mean that this line was super important. But a couple days later, what did we do? We hit this line right here. This line is still important. And in terms of the price action, we can see that this line is important. The lows of the day right here bounced right off of this line right here. And this is a line that, again, I've had on this chart for quite some time. If I were to add another line on this chart, and I'm not sure what's up with this high of the day today, we went as high as $800.72. I don't think that is accurate, but that is interesting. And it also shows that on Google as well. And I'm not saying Google is right as well today, too. So something weird is going on with the price in terms of the candle today. Just keep that in mind. I'm not sure why this candle went up so high. If we did actually hit that price today, let me know in the comments below. But the other point that I'd pay attention to, in terms of the upside, for example, if we were to draw something like this, let's say, this could have gave us an idea of when it might have been a good time to exit. In terms of, okay, well, if I'm buying down here, when am I exiting? I'd be exiting at the upper end of this trend, basically. So we can see here, if I'm buying on this trend line here would be the area that I'm trying to exit the stock. And we can see that this ended up being a pretty interesting point that could have been a signal of when to exit the stock. So this is a line that I'll be paying attention to in the future, just as this is a line that I'm paying attention to when I'm buying the stock. I'm not saying that this won't go below this. We could definitely go below this, but as of right now, this line right here, has definitely been an interesting line to pay attention to. If the broader market sells off, Tesla will obviously sell off in a greater way than the broader market. That's just how it is. It's kind of a leveraged ETF, just like Bitcoin is kind of like a leveraged ETF in terms of it makes drastic moves to the upside and drastic moves to the downside. And it is pretty much correlated also with the market. Another stock to pay attention to, and this is one I've been talking about on the channel, is Salesforce. So I talked about when I was planning to, and these trends, I've been talking about this for quite some time. But I talked about when was I going to exit my options because I didn't have options that were that far out. So I had to sell these options at some point. I talked about possibly selling at the gap fill over here. And if not, a little higher than the gap fill. So basically, we had this gap fill. We quickly ran up and then we finally actually went up to the top of this trend. This is something that's interesting and important to pay attention to. Once we got rejected off of this top of this trend here and when it started going down, this is when I sold out of my options I had on Salesforce. So I made sure to lock in those gains because especially if you have options, you don't want your options to be worth nothing in the future. You want to lock in those gains to make sure. In terms of the common stock, you can hold on to it if you need to. This is something that will eventually go up over time. Time is your friend when it comes to common stock, not your friend when it comes to holding options. Now, where do I see this stock and what is this going to happen next here? Well, no one knows the future, but one thing that this stock wanted to do is it so seems this trend was kind of weak. It had a few holes in it, literally. It had a hole over here and over here. And we filled all of those holes on the way down, making a gap up here. This is something that will be filled eventually in the future at some point. But as we can see here, we successfully filled all of the gaps here after the earnings. When you have a tech company sell off hard after earnings, there's a nice 3-day rule to just kind of pay attention to in terms of when's a good time to buy back into a stock. So after 3 days of selling off or trading sideways, then you can jump back into the stock and that would be a good time to start accumulating and buy, but be aware of where the floor might be in this stock. The absolute floor, in my mind, obviously we can go lower, but in my mind, the floor for the stock is this downtrend here. This downtrend will be the floor, just like this uptrend is currently the ceiling until we break out of this. And once we break out, this will be, I would expect us to break out in a big way. This, again, these examples here are all examples of ideas of when technical analysis can be of use. But again, remember, it's just a tool. Technical analysis, in some cases, can be more of a distraction. This is the S&P 500, and this is the channel that I showed you guys in my last update. I talked about this idea. If we went down and we failed to break out above this on the next attempt, this would be pretty bearish for me. And yes, we've been recovering and we've been actually staying above this bottom trend line, which is kind of surprising. I was kind of thinking after we hit this so many times, we would go through this. And going through it is still definitely a possibility. What's happening right now to me, it looks like a new trend is starting to form. I'm not exactly sure what's exactly happening. We are still trading within this trend line. So the trend is your friend until it's not. So keep that in mind. But something is starting to happen here. The volatility is picking up, and there is a new trend that I'm thinking is starting to emerge here. And this trend is going to be somewhat volatile. We could take out all-time highs in this pursuit of this new trend. Maybe we're just going to chop sideways for quite a while until the market kind of figures out what to do, whether it's going to go to the upside or the downside. I think that this is going to be a hard thing to short. If we do go down, I think this is something that, again, the shorts will get burned, but it is possible to do some interesting swing trades as well. But again, long-term perspective, the stock market, in my opinion, long term will continue to go up. I think we're in a secular bull trend, and I don't think this is going to be ending anytime soon. The only reason this would actually end anytime soon is if we even go crazily higher and just have a complete bubble, which then would kind of have to crash and take us and kind of set us back a little bit. But bearing a huge move to the upside, this is something that we will consolidate. We could correct. We could easily at some point correct down to 350. That's an easy thing for us to do to go back to this area of consolidation. Well, I'm going to end this right here. I hope you guys got some value from this content. If you haven't already, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel for more content like this, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. And keep in mind that none of this is financial advice. This is just some random guy on YouTube drawing some stick figure lines on a chart talking to you guys.